Sahana vavatu Sahano bhunaktu Saha viryam karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahma Vidvaram Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. So we invoke Bhagavan and Guru's blessings as we start Jaya, as we get back into Jaya. So we have taken a little bit of time off, but I hope you all remember what we have done. And if not, we will do a slight recap, okay? So I'm going to do a slight recap before we start, and then we will go forward. Today, I'm hoping that we can take up Vana Parva. So, but before that, let us look at Sabha Parva, or the second Parva. So, let me just share this with you. Okay, here we go. So where we are is, Duryodhana was upset that the Pandavas were still alive. Now this is after the Palace of Wax incident. And so the Kuru kingdom was split into two, where the Pandavas received half of it, which was Khandava Prastha, and and the Kauravas stayed in Hastinapura. And Krishna, Lord Krishna asked Vishwakarma, the divine architect, to make it new. And so this whole thing happens where now the Pandavas had their own kingdom, this own Indraprastha, and they made it really, really prosperous. And meanwhile, we saw that Arjuna had to go for exile for 12 years, and that's where he marries Subhadra. And we also saw the burning of the Khandava forest. Then we saw that there was a Rajasuya Yajna. They were prospering so much that they performed this Rajasuya Yajna that made them unconquerable in the whole land. And this was where, of course, Lord Krishna was honored as the guest of honor. And this was where there was the defeat of Shishupala and Jarasandha also we saw. And Duryodhana was humiliated in this Maya Sabha. Then we saw that there was a game of dice. Duryodhana was so jealous that he wanted to invite the Pandavas. He wanted to sort of get rid of them somehow. So with his uncle Shakuni, they plot on a game of dice. And in the first round, all of the things, all of their wealth was staked, all the Pandavas were staked, and even Draupadi was staked. and she stood up for adharma, and she surrendered to Lord Krishna. And they were then invited to a second round of dice where they lost, and they were sent to the forest in exile for 12 years plus 1 year of hiding. So this is where we had stopped. And if our Dina ji has provided a very explicit recap, so please make sure you read those because they cover all of the aspects, which I've just done in 2-3 minutes. She's done a very nice detailed recap. So now before we go forward, I just want to explore a little bit about the symbolism of Draupadi, the symbolism of Yudhishthira, this whole game of dice. You know, what exactly happened? Why did it happen? Why so much catastrophe? So we know that Duryodhana was burning with jealousy. And so he had to plot something. Now Yudhishthira felt it was his dharma to go for the game of dice because Dhritarashtra asked, so he had to go. And in this game of dice, at first, you know, he loses control. He loses control of himself and he slips. And one thing after the other thing is staked, and it just goes downhill from there. And he loses every single thing. And after he loses himself, he loses Draupadi. When we really reflect upon this, see, the Pandavas were prospering. You know, they had the Rajasuya Yajna, they had Indraprastha, they had all the wealth, they had Draupadi, they even had their sons that were born to them. And so they seemed prosperous and they were in their own Indraprastha. But then still the Kauravas managed to get them. How is it? This symbolizes a seeker's life. Sometimes when we do a lot of sadhana, we are also prospering. Lots of things will come. Lots of inner beauty, inner wealth, discipline, lots of virtues will come. And, you know, we will get to that state where we will have so many things in front of us. But what happens is, in our subconscious mind, negative tendencies sometimes still linger. And these negative tendencies can only be taken out by severe tapasya or austerity. It can be either meditation, it can be other forms of austerity, but these negativities have to be rooted out. Otherwise, if they're lurking, although they might not be near us, might not be around us, when we are in that situation, they can or have the potential to harm us. So the Kauravas have to be rooted out completely. Having been apart from them is still not enough. And that is the deeper significance of how the Kauravas could still win over Yudhishthira, despite his goodness and his sense of dharma. And when we come to Draupadi, and you know, so many beautiful things we saw last time. One is that she stood up for adharma, and we know this. But what we really need to look at is standing up for adharma is very difficult. It's very difficult. And it can be even in the face where you are the only one standing up for adharma. She asks this question, did Yudhishthira lose me after he lost himself, or did he lose me first? Because that's a very pertinent question. And she goes on to further ask, is she a slave or is she free according to the laws of dharma? Because from what she knows, if Yudhishthira lost himself first, then she cannot be lost by anybody. And she stands up for herself, but nobody's there with her. And very often when we stand up for adharma, in the beginning, sometimes no one's there with us because everyone is afraid. Everyone feels like they have to stick to whatever they know. And that can be very lonely. But still, she has courage to face that whole sabha or that hall in front of everybody and speak what she speaks. Further on, it's Karna, this Shakuni, this Duryodhana, Dushasan. There's this, Chatushtaya, this fourfold wicked folks, and they initiate so many things. And even the disrobing of Draupadi. And also the Pandavas had to give up their upper garment. Now you see here, Draupadi could not rely on anybody. She could not depend on anybody. And in those moments, she depended on only one person. That was Lord Krishna. Sometimes it is said that she held back like this and called Lord Krishna and he didn't come. And then she just kept one arm and he didn't come. And then when she fully surrendered, then he came. This goes to show that our deepest connection is with Bhagavan. Draupadi, as I told you, symbolizes the intellect, Arjuna the Jiva, and the four Pandavas, the four Purusharthas, or Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. A time will come when nobody in this world will rescue us, when nobody can secure us, when nobody can keep us safe. And the only safety or the only haven, protection that we have is Bhagavan. And when we seek Bhagavan, Bhagavan will come. I was explaining to our Chinmaya Yuva Kendra in one of our classes, our connections with other people are like waves. We ourselves, the Jiva, are a wave. And other people are also waves in our lives. Because there's always a beginning and an end to the connection. When was our mother our mother? When we were born. When is a husband, or a wife? When you get married. When is your child? When they were born. Before that, they were somebody else's child. When is a friend? When you meet, when you share something in common. All of these connections have a start and have an end date. They start at a certain time, they end at a certain time, and that's what they're meant to be because they're all waves connecting with each other. But what is the connection of the wave with water? The connection of wave and water is that in essence, the wave is water. The connection of the wave and water is that without water, the wave cannot exist. But without the other waves, the wave can exist. The connection of the Bhakta with Bhagavan is the water and the wave and the water. That is the most secure connection. That connection Draupadi knew. And she was able to surrender to that connection because she knew that a point in time, a point in our lives will come when no connection can save us. We come to the disrobing of her sari. When her sari is disrobed first, it reminds us, or it signifies all the layers of identification that we have, all the waves that we had or she had as mother, as daughter-in-law, as sister, all the waves, all the identification layers are being disrobed. And then they are replaced with that infinite cloth, that infinite identification with the divine, which is immeasurable, which can never be broken. And that's why that Dushasan, even if he pulls so long, he can never reach the end of that sari. That new garment which comes, that new identification, that new union, that in fact is immeasurable. That is Draupadi's sari. And coming to her tapasya of how she, when asked for a boon, because Dhritarashtra said, I don't want Draupadi to be angry at me, because look at her tapasya, that her sari became so long. Look at her tapasya. I don't want her to be angry with me. And he gives her boons, and she asks for Yudhishthira, the very one who gambled her away. She asks. And the second boon, she asks for the rest of the Pandavas, and she doesn't ask any more. What kind of heart must she have to ask for the one who lost her? She wins him back. And on top of that, after asking for the Pandavas and their weapons, she does not ask for anything else. She could have asked for riches, the kingdom, money, servants, everything. But what they did was unforgivable to her. But she didn't. That is the integrity of Draupadi. That is the kind of woman she was. And when they were called back for the second round and they were sent for exile, she went willingly with them and accompanied them. And the 6 of them together went to the forest to enter perhaps the most austere time of their lives. And we call this Parva, Vana Parva, the chapter where they live now in the forest. They come to this forest, and accompanying them are so many Brahmanas, because they feel so sad at the loss of the Pandavas. How noble were they? How mighty, how wonderful were they? And all of a sudden, they were banned. They were in exile, and they had to live from a kingdom of riches, of glamour, of everything. They had to live with very austere clothing, austere food, and just bare forest ground. It is said at that time, Bhima also started to lose weight. And that was so painful for Draupadi to watch. They were in this Vana Parva. And Yudhishthira was feeling so miserable because the Brahmanas were accompanying them. They were walking with them. And it is always the duty of a king, of a grahastha, to feed Brahmanas. And he had nothing to offer. And it is then his guru told him, Daumya, you must pray to Surya Bhagavan, because Surya is the provider of all nourishment, of all grains. He makes all of the grains grow. He brings all food. You must pray to him. In Daumya, Rishi taught Yudhishthira 108 names of Surya Bhagavan. It's a very beautiful section in Mahabharata. And so Yudhishthira performs intense austerity to Surya Devata. And in return, he receives what is known as Akshaya Patra, this copper vessel with inexhaustible food. It means that food, whatever food is cooked in that vessel, it will not be over. It will keep coming on, keep coming, until Draupadi eats. After Draupadi eats, that vessel, food, will be over. Because she is Annapurna Devi. She's the giver of all food. So once she eats, it will be over. And with that, they were able to feed the Brahmanas, and they were able to sustain themselves for 13 years. Now, what else happens in this forest? In this forest, Lord Krishna comes to visit them. And they are so incredibly happy to see Lord Krishna. But Lord Krishna is so sad at this news. He had to be in Dwaraka because this Shishupala's friend had taken revenge and was harming everybody in Dwaraka. Hence, Lord Krishna had to go to Dwaraka to rescue everybody. And he was so much in pain that he was not there for this whole episode. And he looked at Draupadi and he says, Draupadi, I promise you that you will be queen again. I promise you that everybody will pay for what they did. And your days, your sad days will be over soon. He speaks to Yudhishthira, Arjuna, Bhima, Nakula, Sahadeva with such warmth. And he spends some time with them. And then he bids them farewell and tells them that he will come to visit again. In this time, Bhima is so enraged at Yudhishthira. Draupadi is so hurt, saying, how can you just forget about this? How can you just easily forgive? How can you let this go? What have they done to you? They've cheated you. Bhima is also in so much pain. He just wants to fight right away. And he says, let's just go right now. Let's just do it right now. What is the use of sitting here in the forest? And Arjuna is there, Nakula, Sahadeva. Draupadi says this Arjuna, who's a mighty warrior, who shoots bows and arrows, he's here strewing pebbles in the lake. This Nakula and Sahadeva, who are mighty swordsmen, they're carrying fruit baskets. What is wrong with you, Yudhishthira? And Yudhishthira says, listen, I have done wrong and I am going to atone for it. I am going to perform intense tapasya. But this anger won't do anybody any good. This anger won't do anybody any good. Please bear with me. Please be patient with me. We need to stick to the path of Dharma. And so he tells them, just wait. When the time is over, we will do it. We will do it, and I will do it with you. And, just when he's having such a difficult time, Vedavyasa steps in. Vedavyasa tells Bhima, Draupadi, all of the Pandavas, that Yudhishthira is correct. Right now, the Kauravas are strong because they have Drona, they have Bhishma, they have Ashwatthama. This challenging them now, we're too weak. We don't have Dharma on our side. Wait until it's the right time. Although I know it's going to be very painful, wait until the right time. And in the right time, you will be victorious. You challenge them then. And so with this, they are a little bit, silenced, but they still feel so painful, so bitter. But Yudhishthira says, let us keep the company of our wise saints and sages while we are here in the forest. And so they spend their days listening to sages like Markandeya Rishi and several Brahmanas. They listen to wonderful stories to get them to feel virtue, feel goodness. And it is this study, this satsanga, which keeps them alive during this period of penance. Vyasa then goes to tell them, Arjuna must go to perform severe tapasya. He must go to the mountains to perform severe tapasya. So they were like this for maybe 5 years. And it was time Arjuna had to go perform tapasya because he had to acquire divine weapons that will help him in the war. So Arjuna, he leaves them for some time and he goes up into the mountains and he meditates and contemplates on only one thing, and that is Lord Shiva. He contemplates on Lord Shiva because he longs for Lord Shiva. And it is at this time his father Indra Devata meets him. So wonderful. Indra Devata meets him and says, Arjuna, I know that you want all of the divine astras, but I will only give it to you after you meet Lord Shiva, because then you will be worthy of it. So do intense austerity and make your way to Lord Shiva. And Arjuna did only that. There was nothing else in his mind but Lord Shiva. No form of hunger, no form of thirst, nothing. Everything was Shiva, 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 Shiva Maya. And one day, while he was doing his tapasya, one wild boar came dashing at him as to harm him, And so he took his bow and arrow and he was shooting an arrow to this boar. But at the same time, there was a kirata. Kirata is this hunter. There was this hunter who was also shooting an arrow to the boar. And the arrows hit the boar at the same time. And Arjuna said, "Who are you? This boar was bothering me and therefore I hit this boar. Why are you also hitting this boar? You're transgressing the rules of hunting." And just out of that boar, one Rakshasa came, and this Rakshasa was defeated. And so this hunter said, "That's my boar. And therefore I shot at the boar. That was my boar." Arjuna said, "No, he was harming me, therefore I shot at him." And so Arjuna got very mad and challenged this hunter. He said, "Who are you? And what are you doing in this forest? Don't you know it's not safe for people like you?" And the hunter said, "Well, who are you?" And he said, "Well, I am Arjuna and I'm going to challenge you." So Arjuna gets his bow and arrow. And mind you, he was blessed when he was burning that Khandava forest with this inexhaustible quivers. So he would have inexhaustible arrows. And he kept shooting and shooting these arrows, but nothing happened to this hunter. It just seemed to just go past this hunter. Nothing happened. And so he kept shooting these arrows, and nothing happened. And this inexhaustible quiver, it got exhausted. And Arjuna was just shocked. Arjuna then took his bow and tried to fight with this hunter, but nothing happened. And then Arjuna tried even his sword. He had a sword. He tried to fight with this hunter. Nothing happened. Finally, he tried his fists. He tried with his fists to fight with this hunter. Nothing happened. This hunter would not get defeated. He was just aghast. He didn't know what to do. He fainted. He sat down. He looked at the ground and he saw clay. There where he saw clay, he built a Shivalinga. He built a Shivalinga and he put flowers over that Shivalinga. And he prayed to that Shivalinga to help him. And when he opened his eyes, that garland of flowers he put on that Shivalinga, that very garland was on the hunter's neck. And Arjuna realized that this hunter is none other than Lord Shiva. And Arjuna bows down to Lord Shiva and worships him and is so incredibly happy. And Lord Shiva says to Arjuna, "Oh Arjuna, I am pleased with your tapasya. You have done good. And I wanted to bless you, but I needed to make sure you were fit for it. And now I know you are fit. Please ask me what you want." And Arjuna says, "I would like your Pashupatastra, this astra that Lord Shiva has. I would like that." And so Lord Shiva gives him the Pashupatastra. It's a very, very divine weapon in Arjuna. After Lord Shiva gives him this astra, as though the heavens were roaring, you could see Indra Devata, Kubera Devata, Varuna Devata, Yama Devata. All of them were so pleased with Arjuna's tapasya that they also gave him their divine astras. And Arjuna acquired those divine weapons, which would later help him be victorious in the Mahabharata war. Now, what does this all mean? Oh, this is so beautiful. When we are trying to be one with God, we use all kinds of things. Arjuna used his arrows, his bow, his sword, his fist. We try to use our mind, our intellection, our ego. We try to use every single thing to get to God. We try to use our mind to think of God. We try to use our intellect to logically understand God. We try to use our ego and say, I am with God already, and feel like we're God. But the only way to God is not through our might, our body, our mind, our intellect, our ego. It's surrender. When we remove all of these things, all of these layers of weapons, and surrender to that God, then we are granted liberation. Then we are granted the divine weapon of moksha. And that weapon is indefeatable. See, these little stories we have in our Mahabharata, Puranas, they're so incredibly deep. And, we can go on reflecting on this, but this is just one beautiful point from Arjuna's surrender to Lord Shiva. That's all he had to do. Just give up all of his weapons, surrender, and he gets the divine weapon. Which is, and they also call the divine weapon Brahmastra. Brahmastra means I am Brahman. That is the truest astra. Nobody can defeat that one. And upon getting that, so many astras come. Even if you don't ask for it, it comes. What can you do? And so like this, Arjuna was blessed with such superior strength. And Indra Devata tells him, now my son, I'll take you to Indraloka. So now father and son have a gala time. And Indra takes Arjuna to Indraloka. And he shows Arjuna this beautiful Indraloka. And both of them were sitting on the throne, one like the sun, one like the moon. And everybody was so pleased to have Arjuna there. And it was there where Arjuna met one of his best friends, Chitrasena. And in this Indraloka, what else is there to do? He learned the art of dancing and singing and all of these wonderful, wonderful things. But it is also during this time where Indra Devata asked Arjuna to help him defeat all of the Rakshasas that were harming Indra or Indraloka. And so this is where Arjuna acquires lots of practice, lots of experience using divine astras and defeating people from a different loka. So he really excels himself. He's unparalleled. And it is also in this time where he receives a curse. How so? There is this beautiful Apsara, Urvashi. And when she saw Arjuna, she fell in love with him. And she wanted to be with him. And Arjuna said, I'm so sorry, but I look at you as a mother. I cannot be with you, and this is not why I'm here, and I refuse. And Urvashi was so stunned because nobody refuses her. I mean, she is beautiful. And these apsaras, they don't age. So nobody refuses her. So she curses Arjuna. And she tells Arjuna, you will be a eunuch. You will be like a eunuch and you will spend your time dancing around women. And Arjuna was so upset. All this tapasya he did, and now he gets this curse. And so he tells his friend Chitrasena. And Chitrasena says, don't worry. I will tell her to reduce that curse to 1 year. And this curse of Urvashi will actually be very valuable to you in your Ajñātavasa, in that year where you're incognito. This eunuch form will be very useful to you. You will see. And so Arjuna was then happy with his curse. And after having defeated all of the people that Indra wanted him to defeat, he was going to go back to meet his brothers. He had spent about 5 years in Indraloka. But before he goes to meet his brothers, while Arjuna was doing all of these things, something also happened to Bhima. Bhima also met someone very special. So now we look at Bhima. So now come back to where Yudhishthira, Bhima, Nakula, Sahadeva, and Draupadi are. What happens to Bhima? One day, Draupadi was sitting. She was sitting down in the garden and she smelled such a beautiful fragrance. There was this flower which had such a beautiful fragrance and she wanted more of these flowers. And so she calls Bhima. She says, Bhima, I want these flowers that have this incredible fragrance. Please go and get them for me. And you know, Bhima, he loves Draupadi. Anybody that harms Draupadi, he gets upset. Anything that Draupadi wants, he gives. So he ran. He didn't care where, what, no questions asked. She wants a flower, whatever it does, I'm going to get her that flower. So he goes to this forest. This forest is like, very difficult to cross. So many things were there. So he gets into the thick of the forest and he sees this huge monkey just lying flat there. He looks at this monkey and says, oh monkey, I need to pass because I need to get these flowers for Draupadi. Will you please move? And this monkey says, I'm too old to move. I can't move. And he says, please, my name is Bhima. I am a Pandava, and I'm here to fetch these flowers for Draupadi. Please move. This monkey says, I can't. I'm so old. It's going to be so hard for me to move. You can just leap over my body. And Bhima says, I cannot leap over your body because it's disrespectful. You are older than me. You're this old monkey. I cannot leap over your body. But if you won't move, I'll do what my brother Hanuman did. If you don't move, I'll do what my brother Hanuman did. He leapt over that ocean to go to Lanka. And he found Mother Sita when nobody else could do it. So his monkey says, Acha, tell me about your brother Hanuman. So he says, my brother Hanuman is the bravest, strongest. He's the son of Vayu. And he could do everything. He even set fire to Lanka. And so this monkey said, listen, if you don't want to leap over me, then you move my tail. Just move my tail and you pass. You pass from that way. So Bhima said, fine. Now Bhima's thinking, I'm going to just lift this tail and I'm going to lift this monkey out of here. So much trouble he's giving me. And so Bhima goes and tries to lift that tail with one hand. It's too heavy. Tries to lift it with two hands. He can't even move it. Forget lifting it. Bhima just bends down and bows down to this monkey and says, please tell me, O monkey, who are you so strong and mighty? This monkey says, O Bhima, as you are the son of Vayu, I am the son of Vayu. I am your brother Hanuman. And Bhima and Hanuman, so happy to see each other. They give each other such a big hug. Brothers meeting after a long time. And they have a beautiful discussion. Hanumanji tells him about Ramayana. So Ramayana Katha is also in Mahabharata. And they have a very beautiful dialogue about the yugas. But that we will save for when we do Hanuman Chalisa. We will look into this Hanuman Bhima Samvada. So we can go into it in more detail. So Hanuman was so happy to see Bhima. Bhima was so happy to see Hanuman. And Hanumanji said, what would you like from me? Tell me what you would want from me. And Bhima says, well, first, I want to see your form, that form you took when you became so big and huge when you burnt Lanka. So Hanumanji actually takes that huge form and shows Bhima. And as usual, when Hanumanji becomes really big, Bhima can't take it. And Bhima says, please come back to your regular form. And Hanumanji says, okay, now tell me what I can do. I can, if you want, I can defeat all the Kauravas in one go. I can do it for you. You just tell me what you need me to do. Bhima says, no, Hanumanji, I just need your blessings to bless us that we may be able to defeat them. And Hanumanji was so pleased with this response. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But Hanumanji also tells Bhima, because I love you all so much, I am going to sit in Arjuna's flag as Hanuman. And whenever Arjuna blows his conch, whenever you roar, I will roar with that sound so that the whole world will tremble and it will create lots of fear in the hearts of the enemies. Now this episode is very, very simple but very beautiful because you just see what Bhima asks. Bhima doesn't ask for Hanuman to kill all the Kauravas, to slay them, to end them. He asks for blessings to be able to do it himself. The true seeker does not ask God to relieve them of all their duties. They don't ask God, take away all of my duties, take away all of my problems, take away all of my challenges. Rather, the true seeker asks God, give me the strength to perform my duties. Give me the strength to go through my challenges. Give me the strength to go through all of the things that are troubling me, because I know that they're going to make me grow. I know that they're going to purify my mind. So you don't need to take them away, but you need to give me the strength to face them. This is what Bhima understood. And this is sometimes what we don't understand. Sometimes our prayers are, please let this go away. Please, I hope this person doesn't do this. I hope this thing doesn't happen. I hope that doesn't happen. Our prayers are for all of these things to go away. Where actually our prayer should be for the strength to deal with it, because it is that self-effort that will get us to where we need to go. Nobody can do it for you. Nobody can fight this battle of life for you and me. We all have to fight our own Mahabharata war, but we can do it with the grace and blessings of the divine. Not that they have to remove the battle, because then we will never learn and we will never evolve, but they must bless us so that we can succeed. This is what Bhima knew. And that is why Hanumanji was so pleased with this Bhima Sena. And so, of course, Bhima gets all of the flowers for Draupadi, and they're all very, very happy. And now they have to make their way to the next stage of their pilgrimage. Now, what happens here is this. They were going, they were crossing the mountains because this Indra ji had told Lomasa Rishi, please tell the Pandavas, Arjuna will be coming home soon. So they had to climb up all the way, go up in the mountains near Badarika Ashrama. They had to climb all the way up the mountains. And as they were climbing and climbing the mountains, they became very, very weak. It was very, very hard for them to climb. And so Yudhishthira tells Bhima, you tell Ghatotkacha to come. And when he thought of Ghatotkacha in his mind, he indeed came with all of his people, and they lifted all of the Pandavas and Draupadi to help them climb these mountains. And after some time, they saw this ray of light in the sky. It was just this bright, stunning ray of light. And they were wondering what it was. By this time, about 10 years have passed. And that ray of light was nothing but Indra's chariot. Arjuna was finally coming home. And Arjuna comes home and he meets his brothers, he meets Draupadi, and they're so happy to see Arjuna. And Indra blesses Yudhishthira and says, you will be victorious, you will win. You need not worry, everything will be okay. So once again, the Pandavas are reunited all together, but they're much stronger than ever before. Arjuna, because of his tapasya with Lord Shiva, becomes extremely powerful. Bhima, because of his meeting with Hanumanji, becomes extremely powerful. And so they were happy and everything seemed all right. But then something happened one day. One day, Bhima was going in the forest. He was going in the forest and, as usual, doing the Bhima thing. He was walking around and he's playing with all the trees and rocks and everything. All of a sudden, this huge serpent coils around Bhima. Huge serpent. And Bhima, being so strong, is unable to break free. And he's wondering who this serpent is and what's going on. And so this serpent says, my name is Nahusha. I am Nahusha, and I have been cursed by this Agastya Rishi. I have been cursed by this Agastya Rishi, and he told me that I can shed this serpent body only when I have in my coil the strongest person in the world. When I have the strongest person in the world in my coil, I can be shed. But Yudhishthira will also come and meet me. This is what Agastya said. So Bhima was stuck in this coil of this Nahusha, this serpent Nahusha. And meanwhile, it was getting very, very late. And everybody was wondering, what's happening? What's going on? Where is Bhima? So Yudhishthira goes out to the forest. He goes out to the forest and he looks and he traces Bhima's footsteps because they're huge. And he sees how Bhima likes to play around with the trees. He sees Bhima coiled by this serpent, and Yudhishthira is shocked because Bhima is the strongest person in the world. And this serpent says, oh Yudhishthira, I do not want to harm Bhima, but in order to free him, you have to have a dialogue with me. You have to answer all of these questions with me. And so this Nahusha, this serpent, and Yudhishthira have a very wonderful dialogue. That's also something, to look at some other point in time we can explore. But they have a wonderful dialogue. And Nahusha asks him questions like, what is a Brahmana? Asks him questions like, what is it in the world that is to be known? And Yudhishthira says, that which is to be known is only Brahman. That which is beyond pleasure, beyond pain. Acquiring which, realizing which, one is ever free from this samsara. So like this, they go on to have a dialogue. And Yudhishthira also enjoys this dialogue. And this Nahusha is so pleased with Yudhishthira that he loosens his coil from Bhima and he resumes his form. And so now everybody is okay. Everybody is happy. So now some 11 years have passed and the Pandavas are in their forest. Now what happens? Lord Krishna comes to meet them again. Lord Krishna comes to them and says, how have you been? Now 11 years have passed. How is everything going? And, there's still that sense that they want to go and fight right now. But of course, Yudhishthira says, no, we have to wait 2 more years. Be patient. And Lord Krishna says, yes, let's be patient. And Lord Krishna tells them, please do not worry about all of your sons. All of your sons and Subhadra are with me in Dwarka. And I've been taking care of them. I've been training them. They've been doing well. So go through 2 more years. Go through 2 more years. And then we will fight. if we need to. So Lord Krishna pays them a visit also and then leaves. Now, meanwhile, word gets around. Word got around about how these Pandavas were becoming so strong, how Arjuna acquired this Pashupatastra, how Bhima met Hanumanji, and how Bhima defeated so many Rakshasas. How Yudhishthira was so steadfast on the path of Dharma. So many people kept telling the Kauravas, whichever Brahmanas went to visit the Kauravas, they kept telling stories of the Pandavas. That was just their pastime. What to do? The Pandavas were so glorious. So they kept telling stories, they kept saying stories. And the jealousy kept increasing in these Kauravas. And so these Kauravas said, something must be done. We must make them feel so bad and so low. They feel so victorious and so high. We must make them feel so bad and low. So they planned this Goshayatra. Now, what happens is, see, these Kauravas, they have lots of cows, in different parts of the forest, etc. And so they said that we are going to go inspect the cows. We're going to count how many cows we have, check if they're okay. We will go check on the cows. But really, their intention was they wanted to show off their wealth, their luxury, and all of that to the Pandavas. So exactly where the Pandavas were staying, that's where they wanted to do their Goshayatra, and they wanted to show off all the things that they had. And so this Duryodhana, Shakuni, Dushasan, this Karna, four of them again plotting all of these nonsense things. So they go and they come with all their fanfare, their retinue, their glamour, all of nice luxurious things. And on purpose they camp out right outside where the Pandavas are. All of these things, sometimes people do these things to make us feel low or bad, and in front of you they'll display all of these things. See, one thing is not to be jealous, but another thing is not to make others jealous of us. There's no need to do that. Why make somebody feel bad if they don't have something? That is above and beyond. So anyway, of course, Duryodhana wanted to show off. So he said, I want to go swim in this lake that's there. So his retinue goes to the lake, and they see that the lake is occupied by Gandharvas. And the Gandharvas say, nothing doing, we're occupying this lake. Duryodhana can't swim here, so please go find somewhere else. So Duryodhana was so mad when he heard this. He said, oh, we will fight with these Gandharvas. What are they saying, that we can't occupy the lake? So Duryodhana brings his army and all. And Duryodhana has a fierce fight with all of these Gandharvas. Extremely fierce fight. And it goes on and on and on, to the extent that these Kauravas are being defeated. This Karna, who's so strong and mighty, who boasts of his strength, he ran away. He ran away because he could not fight anymore. This Duryodhana was captured. He was bound, he was tied, and he was captured by these Gandharvas. Now it came to the point where the women, the innocent ministers and all of that, they were also being harmed. They went to Yudhishthira. And they said, Yudhishthira, we need your help. These Gandharvas have captured the Kauravas, they captured the Duryodhana, and they are holding us in prison. They're holding us to them, and we need your help. And Yudhishthira looks at the Pandavas. Now what's happening? Bhima is so happy. He's so happy because he says, finally, they're getting a taste of their own medicine. They're doing whatever is meant to be done with them. Good for them. Now Yudhishthira is performing his tapasya. So he's not able to do anything or engage in any war. He's in the middle of his severe austerity that he took up because he's atoning for his huge mistake. He tells Bhima and Arjuna, you please go rescue Duryodhana. What? They are just livid with him. They're like, what do you mean? That very person for whom we are here, we have to go rescue. And Yudhishthira says something so beautiful. He says, when we are against each other, they are 100 and we are 5. But against a common enemy, we are 105. He says, listen, a Kshatriya's duty is to protect the innocent men and women who are being harmed. That is our Dharma right now. That is what we have to do. Second of all, he said, this defeating the Kauravas, why do you want somebody else to do it? We have to do it, so we will do it by ourselves. So bring them back, let them go, and we will defeat them ourselves in the right time. This Bhima and Arjuna, finally they look at Yudhishthira and they're just nodding their heads and they said, fine, we swear, we vow that we will capture, we will bring back that Duryodhana. So anyway, they went, Arjuna and this Bhima, they went to fight with these Gandharvas. And, the Pandavas fought, and it was just so crazy, that fight. And finally, the Gandharvas revealed themselves to the Pandavas. That Gandharva was none other than Chitrasena. That was Arjuna's best friend from Indraloka. And this Chitrasena said, Arjuna, Indra sent me here because he knew what the Kauravas were up to. He sent me here. He knew they were up to this, so he sent me here to protect all of you. And so they stopped fighting. And Arjuna said, okay, now you please let them go. And this Chitrasena said, I will give Duryodhana to Yudhishthira because it's Yudhishthira who asked, so I will give him to Yudhishthira. Now imagine this. Duryodhana is tied up. He was captured and he was given to Yudhishthira. So Yudhishthira, please do whatever you want with him. Yudhishthira says, Duryodhana, I wish you well. Don't do anything so rash again. You please go back to your kingdom. Yudhishthira lets him go. Please see this. Yudhishthira lets Duryodhana go. The cause of all of his misery, he lets him go. And this is again a symbol of that he has to fight that war. So he won't let anybody else fight it. He has to fight it. And this Duryodhana is so humiliated. He's extremely humiliated after this, that he tells his Shakuni, his Karna, his Dushasan, he wants to fast to death. He wants to die because he's so humiliated that he went there to show off and he was captured and he was brought to Yudhishthira. And this Yudhishthira wished him well. Now that is too painful. At least if Yudhishthira was violent towards him, at least he would feel better. But that person wished you well. My God, he wanted to die. He told Dushasana, Dushasana, you be king. I just don't want this anymore. And he was really feeling all of this intense negativity. But what happens, you see, Duryodhana is surrounded by Dusanga, with people who always encourage him to do negative. So they said, no, Duryodhana, you must fight. Don't let this get the best of you. Go to sleep. Just go to sleep, wake up, and we'll figure something out. And he sleeps and he wakes up with a renewed energy. And he says, yes, I want to defeat those Pandavas. And I want to go to war with them. The negativity is so strong in Duryodhana. It's because he's surrounded by negativity, so difficult to become positive. In the Ramayana, we have our Vibhishana, whom we must admire. This Vibhishana, how he stayed so positive in the midst of being in Lanka. And Tulsidas Ji said, this Vibhishana is like our tongue stuck in between teeth. The teeth who crush everything, and Vibhishana is that soft, nice tongue who is able to stay in between these teeth. That's the strength of Vibhishana. But Duryodhana, all four of them, when they're surrounded together, that negativity gets more power. And so Duryodhana ends up having a Rajasuya Yajna. Just like what Yudhishthira had, he ends up having a Rajasuya Yajna. And Karna goes and defeats all of the kingdoms for him. They invite the Pandavas, but the Pandavas decline because they're not allowed in Hastinapura. And he declares his supremacy over everybody. And again, that ego, that pride kicks in to Duryodhana. 2 more years the Pandavas have. What happens in those years? How do they spend it? That we will see next week. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Hari Om everyone.